This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Classes resume Monday in the Mountain View School Division, as they do in so many parts of our province. But it will be a long time there before school starts to feel normal for the students, especially for those in Gilbert Plains. 4 teenagers died in a crash there Wednesday night. A 5th is seriously injured. CBC's Josh Crabb reports on the impact of this spring break tragedy.
A memorial is growing at the intersection of Highway 5 and Provincial Road 274 in Gilbert Plains. 4 teenagers from the area were killed in a collision here Wednesday night just before 11. A 15-year-old girl suffered serious injuries. Gerald Watt of Carberry says his 18-year-old daughter Alexandra Watt died in the crash.
She loved her animals, her family animals. She loved her family too. She just moved to Dawson to live with her friends. She had some very good friends in Carberry. She was also all liked.
RCMP say 2 17-year-old boys and an 18-year-old man were also killed. Officers say the car the teens were traveling in went through a stop sign and collided with the trailer of an eastbound semi. Dan Swintak identified the 18-year-old as his son Chris Swintak. He says his son was a cadet who loved making people laugh and that they had a close relationship.
He was my best friend. I raised him most of his life by myself, and we grew a bond together that it was inseparable.
Swintak says his son went to school in Dauphin. The 2 other boys attended Gilbert Plains Collegiate, which only has 62 students. The school opened its doors to students, families, and staff on spring break to give people a place to gather and get support. Mountain View School Division Superintendent Stephen Jadek says a critical incident support team, which includes school psychologists, will continue to respond to people's needs.
We will be working with school administrators to see what supports need to be put in as students come back from their spring break next week.
Carrie Fillion knows some of the victims personally and lives about 400 yards from where the crash happened. He says community members and friends of the victims gathered at his place in the aftermath.
When I got back after being at the scene, I walked in and there was all these people, and we just sat there and waited to get results one by one as the kids were pulled from the vehicle.
Some of the victims were about to graduate high school. The division superintendent says they lived in an area where people are deeply connected and that this crash is having a huge impact on many people. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Siloam Mission in Winnipeg is changing the way it does things to be more inclusive of the community it serves. The shelter and drop-in space has switched to a behavioral-based model of entry. The CBC's Aaron Broman has more on just what that means.
Siloam Mission serves 3 meals a day to hundreds. There's space at night for 140 people. Now, they won't face judgment and questions at the door about their sobriety. Instead, the only thing that matters is how they treat others.
I think it's somewhat of a great idea because, you know what, it teaches people that they got to live with what person they are, like whether they're on alcohol or drugs.
Everybody is welcome, including people that are using substances, so long as they can live into the behavioral code that we created with community members and with our staff team.
That code: be safe, respectful, and focused on a person's needs.
This really eliminates barriers for service for folks, but also is more just. We've had people in the past who are using substances who are lovely and caring and want to clean up after their neighbor, and people who are sober who are looking to create arguments. So there won't be a conversation about not being able to use substances or being redirected to one of our partners in the sector who is open to people using substances, because we're now one of those places.
Normand Bedard has lived at Siloam for the past 1.5 years, not by choice.
I used to have a home. I had a loving wife. She died from cancer. And my life's been upside down ever since.
He sleeps in a big room with many other people every night and wants to be safe if others aren't sober.
The problem is people are getting in and then they're going into the bathrooms and doing things that we don't know. Then they come out and they're violent.
I don't see that as any problem, as long as it doesn't turn into a big nightclub thing or something, you know.
Blakey Whitecloud says levels of violence have actually decreased under the new model. Sabe Peace Walkers uphold the code of conduct in a trauma-informed way and will ask people to leave if they're not respectful or safe, but they can go through a restorative process to return.
We are having amazing conversations with folks who for the first time are talking about, hey, I'm hearing voices and maybe I need this type of support, and we can start to do that resourcing.
A philosophical shift for the faith-based organization.
But we recognize that addiction comes from trauma. And we recognize that the experience of homelessness itself is a trauma.
Because Mother Earth needs us. We need to heal. The only way it's going to happen is if we start getting along and teaching each other how to get along. Yeah. I hope it's going to get better. I feel it is.
Erin Broman, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Last year, staff at Siloam handled 80 drug toxicity reversals, and now all the staff there have training on how to administer naloxone. Tessa Blakey-Whitecloud says Siloam supports calls for a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg. She says she'd like to see it run by Sunshine House staff, who already work closely with people who use street drugs.
We understand that people who are using substances, are somebody's loved one. And until we resource them appropriately, we are risking their life every day. And so to me, we've lost people that we serve here and that we care about to drug poisonings that could have been prevented by drug testing. We've lost people to drug poisonings that could have been prevented if they had a safer place to use those substances. And so, I think the person on my board kind of said it best in terms of what stuck out for them. You can't start someone's recovery journey if their heart's already stopped.
If you saw dark smoke fill the sky over Winnipeg last evening, this is why. Firefighters were battling this fire at a large shed at the industrial yard near the Louise Bridge. Crews were first called in around 7:30. The platoon chief on scene last night said the shed was a total loss. Luckily, no injuries were reported. The cause of this fire is still under investigation. This is National Indigenous Languages Day. Manitoba is home to many Indigenous languages, including Cree. Tonight, the CBC's Janelle Henry introduces us to one teacher committed to passing on the language, even one student at a time.
Tutusapwe is a part of everyday life. The Cree language is not so commonly spoken in Winnipeg. Samuel Robinson is Ken Papanicus' only student this term for the intermediate Cree course at the University of Manitoba.
Large coffee.
A class that was almost cancelled because of the low enrollment.
Yeah.
But these two didn't let that happen. Robinson is from the Bunabanabi Cree Nation. He grew up speaking the language, following his grandma around, copying everything she said.
My home community is actually pretty common, especially with youth, which was surprising. I think it has something to do with how kind of closed off we are from the rest of the province, I guess, because it's a fly-in community only.
Robinson hopes to pass along what he learns here by teaching the language too. March 31st is National Indigenous Language Day, which he says is important for language revitalization.
I think it's good. It reminds us not only where we come from, but what has been taken away from us and what we can still bring back and learn again.
Papanicus is a 79-year-old language keeper from Norway House Cree Nation. Over his lifelong career in education, he has taught a lot of students and developed a lot of courses. The University of Manitoba let him decide if he wanted to continue the course with just one student.
I know that the person wanted to take the course, and I hate to disappoint somebody who's interested in the language. It's hard enough to get people to go beyond and be instructors of the language. That's one of the reasons why I'm still here, I guess.
For Papanicus, teaching is more important than money. His advice for language learners?
Don't be afraid to try and speak the language.
And students do just that in the classes he's developed here at the University of Manitoba. Janelle Henry, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Janelle. This has been a very busy week at Brandon's Keystone Centre as thousands of people have visited the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. This year, newcomers have had the chance to learn more about Canadian culture there through special tours of the show. CBC's Brandon reporter Chelsea Kemp brings us the story.
Exploring the Royal Farmyard to visit with sheep, chickens, and cows, Brandon newcomers had the real experience at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair this week. Westman Immigrant Services partnered with RBC to give more than 100 newcomers a tour. Highlights included checking out Canadian icon Al Simmons, cheering on the Woof Jocks, and getting a taste of some Canadian foods. Keltuma Lavid even got to hit the stage with Doodles Doodoo the Clown. The 70-year-old came to Brandon from Syria in November 2020. She says her favorite part was the petting zoo because it reminded her of her home country.
I was so nervous, but so good. It's because in my country, we used to have farms there, so we have lots of animals, any animals we have. So it was a little bit nervous because I haven't touched them since 3 years, 4 years.
The community outreach manager at Westman Immigrant Services says the fair helps integrate newcomers by helping them learn about agricultural staples and other parts of Manitoba culture.
And I think it's just absolutely fantastic for our newcomers to get the opportunity to come and experience. Not everyone really knows what it's about, so we're really grateful to RBC for suggesting this, to partner with us for this, because it's just been seeing the newcomers get all excited about seeing the cows and interacting with Canadian staples.
Alavade is already excited to come back next year because she gets to learn more about Canada while practicing her conversational skills.
So I want to come here because English is not my first language and my parents, they don't speak English, so we have to get more words and learn more. So when we get with people, that's how people learn. So we come here just to see the life, how life is going, and learn more vocabulary.
Holt says the fair is one of many places Westman Immigrant Services works with in Brandon. The goal is to help newcomers feel integrated and welcomed into the community. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Brandon.
It's time now to check in with CBC weather specialist Riley Laychuk, who's clearly on site at some sort of party. Where are you? Where are you, Riley?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Janet. Another Friday, another hockey game, so to speak, here. So we are at the Ice Cave at the University of Manitoba, the Wayne Fleming Arena. The Winnipeg Ice facing off tonight, Game 1 of the WHL Round 1 playoffs against Medicine Hat tonight. The Ice going into this league favorites, fan favorites as well. They're expecting quite the crowd here for Manitobans on this team, and we'll talk about that a little bit later after we take a look at your weather. Let's take a look at the current conditions right now. -2 in the city of Winnipeg right now. I was shooting for a -1. I still think we can get there. Pressure is falling at the moment. So if we look at satellite radar, you can see, predominantly sunny skies across most of Manitoba through the day today. A little bit of cloud cover moving into the north. This is a weak area of low pressure that will bring us some snow through parts of northern Manitoba this weekend. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but if we widen out, you can see high pressure has really set itself in over the prairie provinces and has brought us very sunny skies across the province today. If we look at what Saturday brings, you can see a little bit of instability moving through northern Manitoba. This, some snow that will impact areas like Thompson, Flin Flon, the Paw, Norway House, over toward Island Lake and that region through the day on Saturday. Start to see some cloud building in. Our winds also do pick up through the day on Saturday, and that is because we have a little bit of instability moving into southern Manitoba. This area of low pressure making its way north from the States. This will begin to bring us some wet snow through the early part of Sunday. It moves its way east through the day on Sunday. So wet snow is what we're looking at here in terms of the Red River Valley. Some freezing rain possibly as well, and some higher accumulations even out toward western Manitoba. Looking at the snowfall potential, this takes us out 48 hours from now, and you can see, it really doesn't materialize until we get into the later part of Sunday. I'm calling for 3 to 5 centimeters for the Red River Valley. Areas out to the west, Brandon, Melita, looking like we could, by the time it's all said and done, pick up 5 to 10 centimeters, even higher amounts up toward Riding Mountain National Park. So I mentioned a bit earlier the winds will be a factor with this as well. As we look at winds into Saturday afternoon, those shift around out of the south. We see winds gusting 30 up to 50 through the afternoon, calming down a bit, but we see them picking up again as we get into Sunday, as that system begins to make its way through the province, down to minus 17 in Winnipeg tonight. Winds out of the north at 20. We'll see the winds shifting around out of the south at 20 by the morning, waking up to minus 15. This is well below normal for this time of the year. And another below normal day for us tomorrow, minus 1, under a mix of sun and cloud. Looking at the next 3 days, we'll see that snow, like I said, making its way through Sunday. Windy one as well at plus 1, minus 6 on Monday with a few morning flurries, and we'll start to see our clouds begin to clear a bit, and minus 4 on the way for Tuesday under a mix of sun and clouds. We'll talk a bit more about your provincial forecast and the snow coming to the north a little bit later in the show, but I want to talk a bit more about what we're doing here at the University of Manitoba, the Wayne Fleming Arena, the so-called Ice Cave for the Winnipeg Ice here in the Western Hockey League. They are getting set to play game 1 in the next hour or so. Puck drop at 7 o'clock here tonight. We did have a chance earlier this week to talk to some of the players. We want to show you a bit of Connor Geekie. He's one of the Manitobans on this team, whose brother also plays in the NHL. He was drafted in the NHL, a powerhouse when it comes to hockey. Let's have a look.
We're here with Connor Geekie of the Winnipeg Ice. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
The playoffs start on Friday. You're going to be facing the Medicine Hat Tigers. How are you feeling heading into the postseason?
Yeah, I think we're feeling pretty good. I think it's, long awaited. I think the season, the playoffs couldn't come fast enough. I think just with the group of guys we had, we were pretty excited to see, what we can kind of do. And, I think it's kind of a revenge tour from last year, and, we're just really excited.
Coach saying that the Tigers, one of the more improved teams in the league. How do you prepare for that, for facing a team like that that's improved so much over the season?
Yeah, for sure. You got to give them credit, right? They're, they're a hardworking team, and they're going to be a tough team to play against. I think for us, it's just, a matter of playing our game. I think we've had a lot of success, over this year. So I think we're just going to try to keep that going and go in with some confidence.
When you look back at how the season has been for you and the team, what would you say really stands out to you over the past season?
A lot of things. I think a lot of guys stepped up in big ways. I think, a guy like Evan Friesen, who's really been coming along all year. You got guys like Connor McLennan, Zach Benson, Matt Safoy, everyone. I think everyone contributes on this team. I think that's something that we do so well is that, there's not a lone soldier out there. I think everyone brings a big role, and, that's why we have so much success.
What does it mean to be playing here at home? You came from Strathclair, you're Manitoba born and raised. What does it mean to you to be here and playing in front of your home province?
Yeah, I think it's pretty special. I think it goes, I try not to let it go unnoticed. I think it's a big thing for me. Family, my hometown has always been a big thing. When I heard Winnipeg was coming here when I was 15, I was pretty excited. So, I love playing in front of these fans and just in front of everyone in general. So it's good.
Connor is he's a big center who can, I would say, has really developed his two-way game over the last 3 years.
Crosses in with Wheatcroft. Geekie hesitates. He scores.
I think the last 2 months, especially, he is kind of taken a step forward as far as using his size. He's got an elite shot. Not overthinking, not overhandling, getting pucks in the net, and then just winning battles with his body. Obviously, he's a big center, and he's, you can't have enough of those guys. It just gives us, we are real strong in the middle when you got to stop Chicksaboy and Connor.
Your brother, Morgan, plays for the Kraken. Has he reached out to you, or have you had a chance to talk at all before you head into the playoffs?
I text my brothers every day. I probably call my parents every day. But I think the funny thing is we don't really talk about it, I wouldn't say. Obviously he'll say good luck or, just something a little like that. But, half the time we're talking about video games or, he's giving me a hard time about, something. It is what it is. But, that's what makes us so special.
From the Winnipeg Ice, Connor Geekie.
You're a draft pick of the Coyotes, and you're going to be one day playing in the NHL. Are you excited to maybe one day face off against your brother?
Yeah, I think that's been the topic of conversation a few times. I think I'm really excited. You know, it's been cool. I've always grown up playing against him. You know, I was just very thankful for his friends to let me, you know, both my brothers, they let me join in every time. You know, whether I wasn't good at it or not, they always found a way to put me in. So I think it'd be a really special moment. Probably emotional, I don't like to admit it, but, you know, he's been a big part of how I got here.
Heading into the playoffs, you called this a kind of a revenge of what happened last season, being knocked out. I mean, what is it about this team and the kind of camaraderie and chemistry that you have?
Yeah, you know, I think it's something hard to describe. I think, you know, everyone just kind of gels together, you know. I've never been on a team like this. I think, you know, the past 2 years, the management has done such a good job with, you know, doing our values and, you know, compete, passion, and I think everyone's kind of bought into that, and I think it's really special to watch and kind of how everything pieces together, but like I said, the last 2 years has been something that I'll never forget.
Well, Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck on Friday. Winnipeg is going to be behind you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So CBC's Marjorie Dowhouse there with one of the Winnipeg Ice players, one of some 24 that make up this team. We'll hear more from the team coming up a little bit later in the program, Janet, from here at the U of M.
Thanks so much for this, Riley.
You got it.
Still ahead, St. Lawrence River tragedy. The bodies of 8 people, including a child and an infant, are recovered near the Quebec-U.S. border. We've got the latest on the story after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. An Ojibwe man who was born in Winnipeg filed a Canadian human rights complaint against Indigenous Services Canada. Alan Lawrence just received word from the Commission that his case is being reviewed. CBC's Francine Compton shows us what he's up against.
I feel that I've lost 5 years of my intent purpose of finding my identity, my real identity.
75-year-old Alan Lawrence is contemplating his next steps in a battle with Indigenous Services Canada over Indian status.
I'm talking dozens, scores of auto replies, and countless hours on the phone on hold, only be told that, yes, somebody will get back to you within 2 or 3 weeks.
Lawrence applied in April 2018, but received a rejection a year later under what's known as the second-generation cutoff. The department questioned the eligibility of his maternal grandmother, saying he's not entitled to be registered, according to the Indian Act.
He was mislabeled, miscast, misidentified right from the get-go when he was born.
During an interview with CBC News last June, his wife Patricia Onisco said the mistake started with his birth certificate.
It has his mom as a French half-breed, which she wasn't. And we've got the DNA evidence that shows there's not a smidgen of French in her anywhere.
Evidence he sent as part of his protest to be added to the Indian Register. He followed by filing a human rights complaint against Indigenous Services, alleging age and race discrimination.
It's hard to see my dad have to go through these.
His daughter, Toni Lawrence, works an administrative job in New York City and says she knows the difficulties in bureaucracy.
I feel sad because I realize that our family has the time and the resources and the wherewithal to keep pushing this. And I know that's not the case for so many people and so many families.
Lawrence's story is one example out of hundreds of protests over Indian status decisions. There are currently 383 at different stages of the process, according to ISC. Minister Patty Hajdu says the department will be doing consultations to address Indian Act inequities.
I want to be recognized as an Indian, as an Ojibwe person in Canada.
Once the department decides on a protest, it can be appealed in court. Lawrence's human rights complaint has been sent to the commissioners for a final decision. In the meantime, he continues to live his day-to-day life as a First Nations person.
So I'm looking for accountability and justice and hopefully a little plastic card.
Francine Compton, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Police have recovered 8 bodies from the St. Lawrence River in the Mohawk community of Akwesasne. Among the dead are 2 young children, both of whom had Canadian passports. Authorities believe the victims were members of 2 families, one Romanian, the other Indian, who were trying to cross into the United States illegally. Alison Northcott has more.
Akwesasne Mohawk police are still trying to piece together what happened, how 8 people ended up dead in a marshy area near an overturned fishing boat. Police say 6 were adults, 2 were children, both Canadian citizens, an infant and a toddler. Police say they believe the victims were members of 2 families, one of Romanian descent, the other from India, and that they were trying to enter the U.S. illegally.
All are believed to have been attempting illegal entry into the United States from Canada. The circumstances surrounding the deaths continue to be investigated.
Akwesasne straddles Ontario, Quebec, and the U.S., and police say they have had issues in recent months of people trying to cross into the U.S. illegally, with 80 interceptions since January alone. Police say they're also looking for another missing person, Casey Oakes, a 30-year-old Akwesasne resident last seen Wednesday boarding a small vessel. Police can't confirm if the 2 incidents are related as they continue their search.
Everything is possible. The outcome of the investigation as we proceed on a daily basis will dictate the proof that we'll be looking for in the near future.
Police helicopters circled the area. Dive teams have been helping too. Officers say the weather the night the bodies were found was cold, windy, with sleet, not ideal for a small fishing boat. Several police forces are working with the Akwesasne Mohawk police on their investigation as they work to determine who the victims were and notify their families. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Akwesasne.
This week's federal budget handed millions of dollars to the RCMP to combat foreign interference in Canada's elections. But security experts are telling a parliamentary committee investigating the allegations that throwing money at the problem isn't nearly enough. And the MPs on the committee also heard from a former colleague who claims he lost his seat because of meddling. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian has the details.
Former Conservative MP Kenny Chu laid out his suspicion he lost the 2021 election because of interference from China.
My government is not there to protect me when it's needed.
And he did it sitting across from the Liberal MP who defeated him and current member of the Ethics Committee looking into that very issue. Chu says Beijing spread propaganda about him being anti-Chinese within the Chinese-Canadian community.
They target specific candidates such as myself.
Chu stopped short of saying Baines should not be on the committee, while for his part, Baines had little time for questions.
You know what? I have to catch a flight. I'm sorry.
Can we ask you why you sat on the committee, even though there seems to be conflict of interest for you to be here?
There's no conflict at all.
Do you believe you won because of foreign influence?
Nope, not at all.
Fair and square.
Welcome to Houston.
The seat in BC has flipped between Conservatives and Liberals for the last 12 years, and the civil servants appointed to look into foreign meddling found none threatened the outcome of either of the last two elections. The committee also heard from former intelligence officials saying Ottawa must do more to counter interference.
CSIS has known about Chinese foreign interference in Canada for at least the last 30 years. Every federal governments, from Mr. Mulroney to Mr. Trudeau today, have been compromised by agents of the Communist China.
We're allocating millions of dollars to the RCMP, I learned last week, with no investigative strategy, no prosecution strategy. We're just saying, here, take this money and use this.
The Prime Minister denies inaction.
This government, from 2015 onwards, has stepped up significantly our approach, or the approach that Canada takes on countering foreign interference.
Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, will soon testify before committee herself. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, last evening, we told you about a huge lottery being held in a small community about 90 minutes outside of Toronto. It was called Catch the Ace, something being run at the Legion by the Lions Club, for one. A man won that lottery last night, more than $2 million. He won by choosing an envelope that contained that coveted Ace of Spades.
Well, it is the Ace of Spades!
Now, sadly, he wasn't actually there last night to celebrate. He lives about 20 kilometers away. Thousands and thousands of tickets were sold for this charity raffle held by the local Lions Club. The Catch the Ace contest ran for 45 weeks, with the winning amount growing for each draw. It raised about $3 million before expenses for local charities. More than 2 years after the deal was first announced, Rogers has been cleared to take over Shaw Communications. We'll have the latest coming up. You're watching CBC. The federal government has approved an agreement that will allow the merger of telecom giants Rogers and Shaw. This deal is valued at more than $20 billion. It will see Shaw's wireless business, Freedom Mobile, sold to Quebec-based Videotron. The arrangement comes 2 years after the merger was proposed and with more than 20 government-imposed conditions.
I have secured a non-precedented and legally enforceable set of commitments from both Rogers and Videotron. And after imposing strict conditions, the licenses from Freedom Mobile will be transferred to Videotron.
Rogers will take over Shaw's media and cable assets, most of which are in Western Canada. Rogers will be required to create 3,000 jobs in the West. It will also have to spend billions to expand its broadband and wireless networks and offer new, lower-cost plans to consumers for both services. Videotron will be required to become a national carrier and offer plans that are at least 20% cheaper than competitors. It is not allowed to sell the wireless assets to anyone else for at least a decade. Both firms could face significant fines if they fail to comply. High school students from right across Canada have been in Manitoba this week. They're here learning about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, treaty relations, and also environmental sustainability. CBC videographer Randall Mackenzie spoke with an organizer and some of the students about their experience.
You know, you can read as many books as you want, but until you actually get out and experience something, real change doesn't happen. And we wanted to encourage and provide a place for youth to have a voice, to express their voice. All of the teachings, all of the land-based education was Indigenous-led, and I think that that's a really important part as well.
Through this experience, I was able to be part of a drum circle. You know, I went through hands-on experiences, like the grandmothers at Turtle Lodge helped me make this medicine pouch for my grandma, which, and like you don't learn that in school. And I think it's through these hands-on learnings that you take away more through the culture than you could anywhere else. And it's things like that that are gonna help me come home and be an ally back home.
So being able to have this experience, which is a hands-on experience, and you have non-Indigenous youth coming and being immersed into the culture, it really allows them to step in and gain that perspective versus just kind of hearing about it. So reconciliation is definitely the hands-on aspect, allowing yourself to step into different perspectives and create those safe spaces.
For example, June 21st, I want to be able to celebrate that with my school and celebrate June as an Indigenous History Month and bring a lot more awareness to that and work more closely with the Indigenous support person at my school. And also, we learned a lot of games at Great Turtle Lodge, and I wrote down all the rules, and I want to bring them back and teach them to students at my school and be able to get kids involved with it and learn about the history of those games and where it comes from.
I have great faith that the future is looking bright, and we'll live in harmony one day. It's going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of time, but I truly believe one day with our reconnection, we'll be able to do it.
That story put together by the CBC's Randall Mackenzie. Thank you, Randall. The rink in St. Anne held a voting party as voting opened today for Kraft Hockeyville. The Manitoba town is up against 4 other communities for the title and the prize that comes with it. The winner gets to host an NHL game, and also it gets $250,000 for their arena. The town's recreational services manager says winning this money would mean a new ice plant for the arena. The one at Maurice Chapeau Arena in St. Anne is 50 years old. It faces the possibility of no ice next season if they can't repair the current system.
If we don't fix this, we won't be able to open our doors. So it's just we need to fix the heart of the facility before we can continue.
Kraft Hockeyville has never been awarded to a Manitoba rink, and in St. Anne's they also hope to get something like a girls' change room. Imagine. Voting is unlimited. Register and you can vote as many times as you like. Open till 4 tomorrow afternoon. Speaking of Hockeyville, I talked so much I ran out of video the last time. Our Riley Laychuk, weather specialist, joins us now from the Ice Cave. What's happening there, Riley?
Yeah, Janet, it's gotten a lot louder in here, and warm-ups are now underway. For a few minutes yet, the ice at the far end of the rink here at the Wayne Fleming Arena at the University of Manitoba. Puck drop coming up at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock here. We'll give you a profile of another one of the players coming up after we take a look at your weather. And I mentioned last time that we do have some snow moving into northern Manitoba. We can take a look at our forecast snowfall here for the north, and this takes us out 24 hours. And you can see that, for the most part, fairly negligible in terms of accumulations. Another, 1 to 3 centimeters coming to parts of northern Manitoba, the Paw, Norway House, God's Lake, into that part of the province. As for right now, -2 in Winnipeg at the airport, -1 downtown at the moment. And, this is still below normal for this time of the year by a few degrees at this point. We should be at a daytime high of around 5 degrees for this time of the year. So this is a lot colder than we're used to right now. Around the freezing mark for parts of the west right now, and 2 degrees for Flin Flon in the Paw. A little bit colder out into north, eastern Manitoba, Churchill, Gillam expecting cool temperatures again this evening. In northwestern Ontario, we are expecting mainly clear skies tonight. Could see a few clouds. Other than that, temperatures quite chilly for this time of the year. -14 in Kenora, -15 in Dryden. Into southeastern Manitoba, clear skies, -17s, -18s into the day tomorrow, or tonight, I should say. Much the same for the west as well. A little bit more cloud the further north you go. So Swan River looking at a mainly cloudy sky tonight with a -11 temperature. And for the north, periods of light snow through the northwest, north central parts of the province, and into the -30s for Gillam tonight. -11 for Gillam and Island Lake. Still a chance of light snow in northwestern Manitoba tomorrow. Southwest Manitoba getting above 0, closer to seasonal for this time of the year, but still a few degrees off. A little bit cooler in the Red River Valley, -1s for Winnipeg and Emerson. A bit sunnier in Sprague at 0 tomorrow, and northwestern Ontario temperatures 2 to 4 degrees under a mainly sunny sky. Of course, ahead of that snow that we're expecting to move in come the day on Sunday. So I promised another look at one of the other players for the Winnipeg Ice. Matt Savoy is one of the other players. He's a forward. We had a chance to speak with him earlier this week. Have a listen.
Pass Salati in front. Opportunity scores!
There's a lot of excitement in our dressing room right now. It's the best time of year. We've been grinding throughout the regular season together, and just to make sure our systems are up to par and everything's dialed in. So we got a real excited group here.
Is there any one or two things that you say are probably your team's biggest assets?
I think our depth. I think that's the main thing that drives our team. We can get contributions from every line and every D pair and both goalies. So I think just the guys we have in that locker room and just how well we mesh together. It's pretty special.
He's an elite two-way center. He's the reason he was drafted as high, by Buffalo last year. He backs teams off with his speed, his quickness, great shot. Probably our most explosive player. It just gives us we are real strong in the middle when you got to stop Chick Savoy and Connor.
We've had some injuries and some sicknesses, so it's definitely been tough battling that, having some games with the shortened lineup, but we've been battling these last probably month or two, so it's been good. I think everyone's getting healthy here, and we're ready to make a push in the playoffs.
What can fans expect, I guess, when they come to an Ice game? Say, the one coming up on Friday here.
The atmosphere in our building last year was unreal in playoffs, so I think the expectations are kind of similar this year, and we're really excited to play at home for the first 2 games. Our group's really excited for the playoffs.
So Matt Savoy, 9th overall selection by the Buffalo Sabres in last year's NHL draft, finishing the season this year near the top in terms of points for the Winnipeg Ice. We'll be back a little bit later in the program once again, Janet.
Thank you so much, Riley. Canada's Minister of Families, Children and Social Development was in Winnipeg today on the traditional tour to tell voters about measures in the federal government, things that might help them. My conversation with Karina Gould after the break. The Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development was in Winnipeg today, chatting up all the things she sees as positives in the federal budget. I spoke with Karina Gould earlier today in our newsroom.
Well, look, this shouldn't be seen in isolation from a number of other measures that we have put in place. So the grocery rebate is important, and I know from speaking to families who receive it how much they do look forward to it. So I think we, understanding that, we can't do everything, this is an important measure to help offset some of those costs.
It won't go far.
But it's in addition to some other things that we've put forward. So one of the other items in the budget is automatic tax filing. And so we know in order to access most federal benefits, you have to file your taxes. And so for low-income Canadians, sometimes that's a barrier to accessing these benefits. And if those taxes are filed automatically, we're going to see more people getting things like the Canada Child Benefit, getting things like the HST rebate, getting things like Guaranteed Income Supplement that are going to go further to help them. And one of the things that I would say, particularly for families in Manitoba, is the importance of the Canada Child Benefit. And it's indexed to inflation, so we saw last July that this goes up to almost $7,000 per child, per family for the lowest income earners in our communities. And it's in addition to the Canada Dental Benefit, right? So I was at the University of Manitoba this morning, touring their dental faculty, but also talking about what this means. And, there's been almost 6,000 children in Manitoba that have accessed dental care services since December 1st because of the Canada Dental Benefit. So there are a number of issues that we've put in, or items that we've put in place to address the affordability concerns that need to be seen in that broader context.
The NDP is taking credit for the dental benefit because of your,
Well, we're the government that's delivering it, though. You got to be in government to deliver it.
And you got to have them to stay in government.
But I think it is important because, we're seeing what this means for folks. And what we announced in this budget is that it's going to be expanded by the end of this year to include children under the age of 18, persons with disabilities, and seniors. And, by the time that this program is fully implemented, that's an additional 9 million Canadians that will have access to dental care.
If you ask families who are on low income anywhere, but particularly in Manitoba, the number one issue they're going to say is affordable housing. There just is not enough of it. What do you say to them about that?
Well, we're absolutely working on that. So recall that last year's budget was really a housing budget, and we put in $10 billion.
We haven't seen much of a difference here in Manitoba in terms of affordability.
But we're working with provinces and territories and municipalities. Just 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister announced the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is going to work with municipalities to really reduce those barriers to making sure that affordable housing is being built, that those rent subsidies are being provided. We had put forward the Canada Housing Benefit, which was $500 to low-income renters across the country. So this is absolutely a priority for us as a government, and we're working hard to make sure that we're not only supporting people who are in housing, but getting more housing built, particularly affordable housing.
Let's talk safe water, because we still have 2 First Nations in Manitoba that have boil water advisories in effect. Why are they not gone now, as was promised years ago?
Yeah, look, we invested billions of dollars to lift all boil water advisories on reserve in Canada. Over 100 of them have been lifted. There are always, additional infrastructure challenges that need to be met, but we are committed to making sure that these are all lifted, and we're working in partnership and in collaboration with First Nations communities. That's a promise that, we made and we're committed to delivering on.
So when will those 2 Manitoba First Nations have drinkable water?
Well, I know that work is ongoing, and it's in partnership with those 2 communities as well. So I can't tell you exactly when, but I know that we are committed to making sure that the infrastructure is there in community and that safe water is going to be available. And just on water, one of the other exciting elements in the budget was the announcement of the Canada Water Agency, which is going to be headquartered here in Winnipeg, knowing how important fresh water is for all of us.
Karina Gould, thank you so much for coming in today.
My pleasure, Janet. Thanks for having me.
As we head to break, another look at Wayne Fleming Arena at the U of M. We're live there tonight. The puck drops in just a few minutes, and we'll be right back with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC.
Puck drop here at the Wayne Fleming Arena, minutes away in Game 1 of the WHL playoffs. Game 2, by the way, tomorrow night, right here at the U of M as well. So expected to be another packed house. Here's your 7-day forecast. Sunshine on the way for tomorrow, -1. We are expecting some breezy conditions through Sunday. Wet snow, risk of some freezing drizzle as well. That continues into Monday. Then we could see some more wet snow on the way for Wednesday. We'll have more on that next week as it inches a bit closer and inching toward 0 by the time we get to the end of next week. So like I said, puck drop here against Medicine Hat coming up in just a few minutes. Game 2 tomorrow, Janet, and it's going to be a loud one in here tonight.
Yeah, we can tell. Riley Laychuk, thank you so much for all your work this week.
No worries.
Well, move over, Ronaldo. Another soccer player is now turning heads and heading the ball as well. Here's your daily lift. She's 33 years old, pretty good for an Asian elephant, has been honing her soccer skills at a temple in southern India since she was 4, and apparently she's also really good on the cricket pitch. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We leave you with another look at that Wayne Fleming Arena. Have a fabulous weekend, and thanks for joining us. Go Ice!